All right, welcome to the June 11th Open Community Practice session. This week, everyone's on vacation, which is great. So I'll be recording the session and I'll let you watch it at your own pace. We do have Jonathan Yang with us, so thank you for joining us, Jonathan. I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. So Athabasca University respectfully acknowledges that we live and work on the traditional lands of the Indigenous peoples of Canada. We honor the ancestry, heritage, and gifts of the Indigenous peoples and give thanks to them. For myself, I live on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples. So specifically where I am, I think that includes the Qualicum First Nation and the Comox First Nation. As we know, AU has employees and students all over Canada and the world. So we have a wide range of locations. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today. So first I have introductions and sharing. And then we have our open bulletin, which is basically just an update of what's going on. We have the main event, so to speak, is the Open Resources Tour. So we heard a lot from folks regarding the recent OER survey that they really wanted to know more about what's going on at AU in terms of OER and other open resources. So I took the opportunity to put together a sort of short whirlwind tour of kind of our offerings. So open access at AU, OER at AU, all the stuff we have in public domain, and then a bunch of other resources and initiatives that are going on. Given time, we might have a little discussion about a future open dashboard. And if you're watching this via recording, please add your thoughts to the post. That would be fantastic. So, introductions. I'm Dan Coecroft. I'm the OER librarian here at AU, and I am involved with all kinds of different open things here at AU, but the primary focus of my role is helping faculty find appropriate OER. I see we have a couple of people joining us today, so no pressure, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, now is a great time.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. My name is Jonathan Yang, and I am a tutor at Athabasca University for linear algebra and math 270, 271. And I also make educational resources for other universities and also on YouTube. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan.
Awesome. Hey, Dan. Hey, Jonathan. My name's Nikki Farrell Miles, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at AU. So with responsibility for the overall cybersecurity program for our organization. And I was just really curious about what's happening in the open community space. And so, yeah, that's why I'm here today. Thanks.
I'm going to start with our open bulletin. So typically this is just a sharing space. If you have anything that's going on in your work about relating to open, you're welcome to share it. I'll share a couple things first that I'm up to. We have the OER policy and procedure I've been working on for, I guess, over a year now. And I'm waiting to meet with the provost before taking it to SLTO. So it is coming along. It is it's slow work, so we're getting there. In terms of the OER Publishing Support Program, which I'll talk about in more depth later, we do have 2 new OER coming soon. So if you check out the remix page on AU Press, you can see what they are. And I believe we're looking at potentially September for releasing those. So super exciting. The annual open access, open educational resources kind of grab bag of open resources review is now complete, and that's a lot of information that I'll be sharing today. And finally, I just wanted to give folks in attendance the opportunity to share anything they've been up to, if there's anything they wanted to add to the conversation. All right. Moving on, I'm going to jump right into OER at AU. So let me kind of walk you through what you're seeing here. So the first graph is the number of OER used as textbooks. When I started at AU, this is how I started tracking OER. So in 2022, we had 24 OER, and then this year we have 34. So it's going up every year, which is great to see, and hopefully will continue to go up. In terms of courses using OER as primary text, that is 34 right now, and which makes up roughly 3.25% of all courses. So it's still a very small amount of AU courses primarily using OER as textbooks. You'll notice that these parameters are not exactly the same. So the number of OER used as textbooks is not the same as the number of courses using OER as primary texts. They just happen to be the same number this year, but the number of courses using OER as primary text is often a number that's sort of non-reflective of how many OER are being used in a course. So some courses use several OER, and other courses use like the same OER, right? So it's just a different way of looking at the numbers. If I were to take the enrollment of these courses from the last fiscal year, we're looking at about 3,600 students being benefited by using OER as primary texts. So if all those courses don't have the course materials fee as a result, you can just imagine the savings. Of course, the course material fee is changing to $88, so it's kind of a hard number to calculate exactly. There's several different ways that OER are served here at AU. There's kind of advantages and disadvantages to all of them. One of the common ways we see OER served to students is as PDFs. So I've given you some examples on the left-hand side here, which is obviously not exhaustive. We have Biology 401, Accounting 351 and 352, and Comp 306. For the biology text, it's a great OER that they found online. For accounting, it's a lyrics learning PDF. We might go into more detail about lyrics learning later. And for the computer science class, we have a bunch of C++ PDFs that were served as OER to students. Now there's like obviously huge advantages to using PDFs. Like everyone can use them, have that universal compatibility. It preserves the formatting too. So it's not like some websites where the CSS goes all weird. The way you serve it is the way it stays. Offline access is super important. Folks with connectivity issues or remote learning in remote communities. They don't need the internet connection to access their textbook right away. Ease of distribution is great too. You can just email it to students. Students can email it themselves. They're very easy to print as well. So lots of advantages to using OER as PDFs. The disadvantages are that they have limited interactivity, right? They're essentially images. So no interactives, no videos, that type of thing. Another disadvantage is that it preserves formatting, right? So if you have an error, it's stuck in there. There's accessibility challenges with PDFs too. I believe there are ways you can make PDFs more accessible, but they're still not ideal. There are also search and navigation limitations. I know for some PDFs you can link the table of contents so you can kind of jump around. And for some PDFs, they allow you to search. Others are just OCR'd, so they're scanned in their images, so you can't search the text. Another big disadvantage of using OER's PDFs is they're hard to update. So unless you have those source files, you can't go in and make a quick change. So let's say you found an example that's inappropriate or a solution that's not correct. You have to find the source material and then republish it, which isn't always possible when you found it in OER somewhere else. One of the most popular ways to serve OER is on a platform called Pressbooks. So, like I will say with all these particular platforms, if you have questions about it and want to see how it actually looks, let me know and I can walk you through it. Some examples are English 302. Where they're using Writing in College from Competence to Excellence. GCAP 500, they're using professional writing in health disciplines. Nursing 328 is using OER. MDDE 604 is also using these OER in Pressbooks. Now, Pressbooks has a number of advantages over and above PDFs. So for example, they have multi-format publishing. So what that means is typically when you are accessing an OER on Pressbooks, you can read it online, you can download it as a PDF, or you can download it as maybe an EPUB or other formats, depending on what you select. OER are also mobile friendly. So unlike a PDF where you have to kind of zoom in to make it work, a Pressbook will reflow to your size of your screen. There's also built-in accessibility tools. This is something that Pressbooks has been working on for a while, and they're getting better all the time. There's support for interactive content. So there's a plugin called H5P, which allows you to embed things like quizzes or games right directly into your textbook, which is super nice if you want students to just flex their knowledge or test themselves. It has built-in search options, so you don't have to Control F through a PDF. You can just search at the top. Navigation is super simple, and it provides analytics too. So if you're the author of the OER on Pressbooks, you can actually see what pages students are looking at the most. Excuse me. One of the disadvantages is that they're often externally hosted. When I say often, I mean almost always, because at the moment we don't have a Pressbooks instance here at AU. So the same goes for editing, right? You can't find a Pressbooks book that you like and make changes to it. You're going to have to ask the author for a version that you can edit. In some cases, that would be maybe using some sort of consortial agreement to access Pressbooks. So there are options out there. There's also offline limitations for interactive elements. So if you found a Pressbooks title that you really like and it's got those H5P elements in them, or maybe it has videos, embedded audio, that type of thing, once students save it as a PDF or an EPUB, or download it as HTML, for example, all those interactive elements are going to disappear. So that's a disadvantage for sure. The new kid on the block is Manifold. So if you're familiar with AU Press and their titles, those are all on Manifold. So At AU Press, we currently have a program called the OER Publishing Support Program. And I'll tell you more about that later, but essentially it is a opportunity for authors to receive support to take an existing OER and put it into a super professional, polished format. So far, we have 3 finished textbooks. So for Comp 218, we have Introduction to Computer Programming with Python. For English 255, we have Writing in University, Read, Think, Write. And for Phil 252, we have Critical Thinking, Logic, and Argument and Introduction. So far, these have been received pretty well. The advantages for using Manifold is, well, first of all, they have just a beautiful web presentation. It looks super polished and is super easy to navigate. It supports even more content types than Pressbooks. So I'm trying to think of all the specific ones, but you can read it online. You can download as a PDF. You can download it as an EPUB, HTML, and I think Mobi as well for your Kindle readers. So it's super flexible that way. It also provides annotation built right in. So if you are a student and you've made an account, a free account on Manifold, and you want to take your notes, you can take your notes right on the reading platform. If you're doing a group project with your classmates, you can actually do group annotation. It's super neat. Or you want your entire class to reflect on the reading together. That's something you can do. The text is reflowable as well, more so than Pressbooks. So not only can you view it on mobile, you can also just resize your screen and the text will actually adjust the size and the formatting for you. Another benefit is that they're hosted at AU. So if you have a text with the OER Publishing Support Program in Manifold, you don't have to worry about that external website going down and your students losing access. There are disadvantages to this, like with anything. For example, there's no built-in interactive tools. My understanding is that you can make H5P work, but it's a little more complicated. Embedding videos is certainly possible as well. It's also different from Pressbooks in the fact that it's not geared towards live editing. So really it is a publishing platform. You can view the text, but you can't go in and make changes. Whereas in Pressbooks, if you have that Pressbooks account and you have a hosting option, then you're able to make edits on the fly or collaboratively edit. Whereas on Manifold, the press gets that final manuscript, and that's the set manuscript. So you're going to have to make changes to your source files and then wait for a new revision to make those changes. LibreText is another interesting option here. So we've seen quite a few professors use LibreText over the years, and it's super geared towards the sciences. For example, Chem 305, 306, 315, 360 all use Dietmar Kennepaul's organic chemistry open educational resource project. So LibreText it's highly modular and really mixable. So it has a database of information. You can pull different pieces in to make your own almost wiki type project. It has built-in support for math rendering, so MathJax and LaTeX. It has Jupyter Notebooks integration, chemical notation. It's all there. It's also WCAG compliant, so pretty accessible as well. Unlike Pressbooks and Manifold, it's also free to use or host, so you don't have to worry about getting funding for that. The disadvantages are, like one of them is that there is limited offline use. So you can save your pages as PDFs, but they're just not really geared towards that. If you actually look at it, it's more like a Wikipedia page. So I'll let Dietmar tell you more about that in a moment. There's also less visual customization. It's kind of what you see is what you get. They all look kind of the same. So Dr. Dietmar Kenneville has a short video where he explains kind of what they're doing in those courses with LibreText. So I wanted to share that. And hopefully the sound will work for you.
I'm Dietmar Kenneville. I'm a chemistry professor at Athabasca University, which is Canada's open university. So this Integration for Technology Award was because I essentially replaced the commercial textbook in our organic chemistry courses with a wiki. And the wiki is really a key important part of the course for the students because it's their online textbook. But there's a twist to it because they get to edit and re-edit the textbook. So both professors and students are constantly changing it. From the students' perspective, we've gotten positive feedback because they love it because it's a free textbook. You have to keep in mind that for these courses, textbooks are getting fairly expensive. For organic chemistry, if you had to buy the learning materials for this, it would cost in excess of $250. And so for them, this is a nice twist to it. For us, it's very nice because I'm a chemistry professor at an open university, and we have a very strong mandate and culture of open research and open learning. And so this was kind of a natural fit. What we found is the students are participating more and they're engaged in the course because they actually get to have a part in it. We actually vet the work, so we look at it and make sure it's good before we put it into the course for other students to use. So you're doing the crowdsourcing, but at the same time, you're pretty well assured that you're going to have a good product in the end. We didn't start from scratch. What we did was there was a project in the United States started many years ago called the ChemWiki project. They had this hypertext library with literally millions of pages of material. And so what we did was we went in there and we basically selected what we wanted for our course. We tailor-made the course for the students, and it's worked out quite well. And people are doing this at other locations as well, but we were one of the first that were along doing this for our students, and the students have responded really well. Because everything is digital, you can also track it. And so we can actually see what students are using and what they're not using. And so we're starting to get a picture of what the students are doing and perhaps get an idea of how we could make it even better. The performance is not different from what you would find with a conventional print text or even a commercial online text, but the students are going through the course more quickly. I really hope the engagement and the participation will increase as they're doing this, because most of the students that we get go off into other sciences or they're going into allied health or whatever. So chances are the chemistry course that I'm teaching is probably the last chemistry course you'll ever take. And I want them to go out there in the world with something more than just chemistry content.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's a super interesting way of doing OER. It really opens the door for collaboration and student participation. And yeah, so if you're interested in a more of a science OER, that's might be a good option where you might find some. In terms of OER used at AU that are on OpenStax, there's a few of them as well. We have 3 at the moment. So in terms of what we consider like the gold standard of OER hosting, it's usually OpenStax. OpenStax has a large team of folks creating these really introductory texts and releasing them for free. So these will be released every couple years. They'll come out with a new edition, and they have lists of errata that they publish constantly, and actually reach out to folks for feedback as well. So if you find something in one of these textbooks that is an error, you can suggest a correction, and they'll actually make that change. So it's really awesome that way. So right now we have Math 244 using introductory statistics. It is currently embedded right into Mobius, which is a math platform. But for Biology 325 and Physics 200, they're actually linking out to the OpenStax textbook. The benefit of that is obviously you get those updates and you don't have to make those changes yourself. And you get that high quality peer-reviewed content to your students. Like the other platforms, they also have multi-format availability. So if you want to download it as a PDF, for example, you can do that, or you can read it online. OpenStax is also super accessible. They've worked hard on that, and so that's not something you have to be concerned about. There are disadvantages to using an OpenStax textbook. They are primarily statics. They don't have H5P interactives. They don't have embedded videos, that type of thing. There's no built-in annotation or self-reading capabilities like Manifold has. And it's not a platform for authoring. So you can't write your own OpenStax textbooks, nor can you publish your own OpenStax textbooks. You can, however, take those textbooks and make changes yourself. You'd have to host it elsewhere. So there's so much in the world of OER going on here at AU, and I've just dipped into a very small portion of it. In terms of open access, obviously, there's hundreds of courses using open access text as supplementary readings. We do have about 21 courses using them as primary texts. And just to clarify, the difference between open access and OER is the ability to modify. So a lot of folks are using OER and they're making changes. They're downloading copies of themselves and making, like adding chapters that they feel need brushing up on, or removing extra content, or maybe even combining different OER together. In terms of open access, the license only allows you to read and share for free, so you aren't allowed to make changes. There are a couple courses using externally hosted open access. So we have Comp 659, Natural Language Processing with Python, and Health Administration 369, Healthcare, a Community Concern. So both those texts are linked out to websites. If you run the numbers in terms of enrollment, these two courses annually affect about 1,126 students. That is from last year's enrollment data, so that has certainly changed. However, the vast majority of courses using open access text as their primary readings all come from AU Press. Big surprise, right? I think I got them all here in this picture. There's some amazing covers in there. But a fun fact is that AU Press was the first university press in Canada to publish exclusively under an open license. So everything they publish is available for free to read and share online. So that is super awesome. There's also public domain resources being used at AU. So public domain it typically is a almost beyond copyright designation. So this typically happens when the author dies plus a certain amount of time. So in the United States, I believe that is the life of the author plus 70 years. So after that time period has passed, those texts no longer hold copyright. So not only can you share and modify them, you don't need to even credit them. So it's kind of the final most open category. English 395 uses Samuel Butler's The Way of All Flesh. English 393 uses A Passage to India. And English 305 uses The Princess and the Goblin. You'll notice that these are all Project Gutenberg texts. If you've heard of Project Gutenberg, it is a website that takes all those public domain texts and provides them online for free for reading. It's super great in so far as that it provides that under multiple formats, but there are new and more, let's just say, professional looking and edited alternatives out there. We'll find that many texts in the literature, language, and philosophy classes make use of older texts in the public domain. And a lot of them actually use paid textbooks for students. So there's a lot of benefits to using a modern version of a public domain text. For example, you might have a more modern translation. You might have an introductory passage from some experts. You might have a really pretty organization and flow to it. But there are options out there. So, for example, you could go with standard ebooks. I've included some of these covers here from standard ebooks. Standard ebooks is super nice because it has even more formats than Project Gutenberg. It looks really nice, and you can obviously download those different formats and keep them for free. LibriVox is a community-sourced audiobook project. So you'll find most texts in the public domain are available as audiobooks as well. So it's always nice to give students extra options. Wikisource has basically all the texts that are in standard ebooks and has many other formats available as well. I personally prefer standard ebooks just because of the presentation, but Wikisource is always a good place to check as well. One other thing to mention is that it's totally fair to acknowledge that your students might prefer a physical text, right? So when, especially if you're reading an entire novel, maybe you just want that physical version, and that's totally fair. Hopefully, in the near future, we will have options to print both OER and open access and public domain texts to share with students. So keep your fingers crossed and stay tuned. We also at AU have options for OpenCourseWare. So these are essentially copies of existing courses that are available completely free for students without getting credit. So they're usually not for credit. They're hosted on the OpenCourseWare site. So unfortunately, that is a sort of depreciating location at the moment, and we're exploring options to update that. The advantages obviously are that they're free, so students can access them anywhere at any time. Maybe they want to challenge a course and want to practice, they can do it there. And it really works to reduce those barriers to learning. We also have all kinds of open media AU. And forgive me if I haven't included your project here. There's just so many. So I just picked a couple here. We have Jonathan Yang's Dr. Y Heart Lab, and Jonathan was with us today, so thank you for that, Jonathan. So many openly lessons videos to check out there. We have a vaccine confidence video that has been produced by Connie Baumgren, Stella George, and Karen Cook. And that's basically super interesting animation available to help folks instill a sort of sense of confidence around vaccines. So Connie also runs the Multiply K-12 OER project. So those are 3 openly licensed videos and 17 podcasts. They're all hosted on her blog, the Blended and Online Learning and Teaching multi-authored blog. So there's a bunch of folks on there to check out. And I will be, if I remember, releasing a list of all the links in here so you can check these things out afterwards. We also have CIDR. So it's the Canadian Initiative for Distance Education Research. It's a research initiative of our Open Journal, so International Review of Research in Open and Distributed Learning. So that's RODL, and the Center for Distance Education. So CIDR sponsors a variety of professional development activities designed to increase the quantity, excuse me, and quality of distance education research. CIDR's professional development scope is broad, ranging from learning and teaching application, issues of finance and access, the strategic use of technology in distance education settings, and other factors that influence distance education in Canada. What's super cool about CIDR is that they have just started releasing their sessions on YouTube under a Creative Commons license. So if you want to check that out, it's free to do so. I mentioned RODL in the last slide. It's a peer-reviewed open access e-journal. It's dedicated to advancing original research, theoretical insights, and best practices in open and distributed learning worldwide. It's freely accessible to anyone with an internet connection and charges no fees for article submissions or access. So it ensures inclusivity and global reach. It serves both researchers and practitioners in open and distance education, aiming to enhance the quality of research while fostering its practical application. RODL focuses on translating research findings into policies and initiatives that expand educational opportunities for students and educators alike. Kind of pairing with that is the OER Knowledge Cloud. So it's a database that houses OER-related research and documents from around the world, so it's not just AU. There's currently 2,800 or so published records, and 1,700 file archives. So this includes searchable records of journal articles, reports, books, or other items in any medium. So these items are available either directly on this platform or links out to those sources. I did promise that I would speak a little bit more about the OER Publishing Support Program, so I'll do that now. It is a program that opens up for applications every January or so. If you have questions, please reach out to me and we can kind of discuss what that process looks like and how you can prepare yourself for that application. But essentially, it is a service that provides supports for project management, copy editing, typesetting, design, file conversion and creation, and even gives you an ISBN and DOI for your book. So I can help folks towards that program. The folks at AU Press, excuse me, I've got a tickle in my throat today. The folks at AU Press are experts at publishing those finished, polished books, so they really know what they're doing. And they'll help you with that actual process. At the end of the line is the remix imprint. So I will provide a link to that as well, but it's a part of their publications, which includes that reading platform on Manifold. And yeah, it's essentially where you can find the finished texts. So I will include a link to that. Since we have about 15 minutes, I will say, yeah, we probably do have time to have a quick open discussion, but I'm going to just quickly cover these library resources. So ideally and typically our community practice sessions are more of a community. It's not just me talking to you, it's folks sharing what they're up to and what they'd like to do. So I'm sorry if I've taken everyone's time in this way, but lots to cover this month. I just wanted to share a few of our resources at the library. So we have an open education guide. You can find kind of everything there. If you're interested in open pedagogy, open Indigenous resources, open data, and more, that's kind of your hub. That's where you start. And that links out to our OER guide, our open access guide, etc. I've even created a copyright and licensing mini course, which is actually going under revision sometime this summer. We also have the OER Community Corner, Engage. So that's a space where folks can share anything they're up to, basically anything related to OER. Maybe it's just an article that you find interesting. Please join us if you can. I also have the OER by Discipline Guide, which I will be updating in the coming months. It is a searchable collection on Pressbooks of all adoption-ready OER. So if you want, you can type in your course code and you can find some textbooks that I've suggested. Excuse me. So you can check out what's being suggested for your course, or just browse by subject matter if you want to see what's available up there. The real the impetus for this, the way I framed this today, is not only that OER survey that came out a few months ago, but also this idea of having an open dashboard, somewhere where folks can check out what's happening here at AU. Not just for OER, but for open access and all these open initiatives and projects that are going on. So I was really wondering and hoping to ask you, what does that look like to you? What information should I be trying to convey? How can I make it most useful to you? All the W's. So yeah, if you have any ideas, please jump in.
Open floor, Dan. We have questions we can ask.
Yes, please.
Excellent. Okay, terrific. I suppose I ought to say who I am, because I doubt either of you know who I am. I'm not an academic. So Jeff Pagel, I'm the Director of Enterprise Architecture here at AU. It's a brand new practice, and one of the goals that we have in the immediate future is to engage with various units around the university, so the business units, administrative units, and the libraries too, of course, and that to understand things like this, what you're doing, what you're up to, how we can help you in terms of, things from business process to data management to technology selection, that sort of thing. That's what we're here to do, is to help make meaningful design decisions, about systems and about processes and that. So anyway, so that's just a little bit about me and what I do here. But as I was listening to the presentation, actually I had about half a dozen questions. You answered a couple already for me in the course of your talk, but I'll ask a couple that you didn't. First, maybe I missed a slide, but do you have the current distribution of these formats that you discussed, like an aggregate and that? Because I knew you were doing them per slide a little bit, but I was curious if you happen to have an aggregate of that just to see kind of what that looks like percentage wise, like it's 10% PDF, it's 15% Pressbooks, it's this many manifold and so forth.
Totally. I don't have that on hand, but I could pull that information together for you for sure. I have the like a big spreadsheet with them all
Ah,
in there. I just haven't divided it in that way. But I can
gotcha.
tell you off the top of my head that Pressbooks has to be up there in terms of what people are using. And then probably second would be PDFs for OER.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Then that leads nicely into the next question, which is what kind of feedback have you received from students about these? And that did they express a strong preference for any particular format? Any concerns they have? Just curious about that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So today, this morning, actually, I received the course evaluations for a couple of courses. I was asking to see kind of like how have students adjusted to these new textbooks being used. Particularly, I asked about the three courses from the, I skipped the slide here. These these three titles here from the OER Publishing Support Program.
Yeah, yeah.
So obviously we're lagging a bit behind in terms of those performance evaluations. So we're getting some feedback still from the previous textbook. But from what I've seen, people, students are really enjoying the new delivery. Like a couple of them had said it's much improved. I'm not sure
Excellent.
how they have accessed like the previous version. Maybe they're retaking the course, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I have to say there are a lot of comments still from students saying, "Hey, I'm an older student. I'm an older learner. I just prefer a print option." So
Yeah.
that's something we really have to think about in terms of offering those print-on-demand services.
Yeah, gotcha. Um, this is great because I'm be able to segue to these questions beautifully in that. So the next question is, what are some opportunities that you see for improvement? I mean, and a few things came to mind as I was going through this. Now I'm starting to see as you went through it a little bit more why some things make sense and why they don't. So for example, I was thinking, why aren't we standardizing to a format, or standardizing to fewer resources, or looking at optimizing delivery modes, or looking at particular cost savings, or that sort of thing. I mean, I know these are open educational resources. The cost thing is a little different for this, but anyway, the original question, I guess, what opportunities do you see for improvement here? What kinds of things are you looking at?
Yeah, I got lots to say about this. So, first, in terms of cost savings, the conversation is definitely different at AU because we have this model where we're subsidizing the cost of textbooks for students.
That's right.
So, OER is or are, I'm not sure the correct grammar on that one, saving students money, right? But no, it's not the same amount of savings as other institutions. So in our case, maybe we save the student that course materials fee, which is $88 now. At other institutions, the students are expected to bear that entire cost of the textbook. In some courses, that's up to like $400 for a textbook. So it's a
Yeah.
huge deal. At AU, the pressure actually comes from the other direction. So since we're subsidizing the cost, the university is paying for these textbooks. And so I worked with the course materials team to kind of think about ways where we can prioritize classes and courses with high enrollment rates that are also due for revision and thinking about ways where we can improve that situation. Obviously, OER is a solution, it's not the solution. So there's upsides and downsides, like I mentioned, for everything. Um, the sort of the print traditional route has huge advantages for the fact that they're heavily peer reviewed, right? We have these really rigid, strict publishing ways of doing things that just don't really apply to OER. There's been a lot of concern about the quality of OER, and that's something we're still working on. In terms of standardizing OER and sort of reinvigorating that perception, what we can do is really focus on the OER Publishing Support Program. Unfortunately, we only have so much capacity, so you can't take like all these OER and make them all the same, but maybe eventually we can work on a standardized option. The other place we can really work on improving how we deliver OER is having some sort of repository. It's something I've included in the OER policy and procedure that I've developed. Essentially, at the moment, so much of our OER is either externally linked or it's in the DRR. In the DRR, it's not super ideal because there's sorry, that's the digital reading room at the library. There's like formatting limitations there. They can only accept PDFs, for example. Right. And the downsides to externally hosting the OER is that we have no control over them. If a external host wants to, make radical changes to the textbook, we're affected by that. Or if their website goes down, right, that we don't have that continuous access for students, which is kind of important. So getting a repository and at least hosting that stuff ourselves is something that's an opportunity for sure.
Yeah, right on. Do you, along that line of thinking, then, when we talk about resources becoming unavailable or being, compromised in some way by an outage system, there's a disruption, service disruption or whatever. Are there, I don't know, I guess, are there considerations around alternatives and that to these sources and that so that, should one, suddenly become a problem that, hey, we've already got something lined up as a plan B, or is that really not realistic? And that in our environment, I'm trying to think if this is a stupid question. It's probably a dumb question, but it's something that comes to mind as you're saying that is, what about plan B for that?
Absolutely. My guess, and I don't know this for sure, is that most courses have saved those as alternate formats. So if the live version goes down, they can still serve their students via PDF or some other not ideal format. So
Gotcha.
yeah, I hope that folks have thought about this already.
I wonder how often that's come up actually, if that's been an issue in the past where they've had to pull something out all of a sudden because X happens, whatever with the resource you're accustomed to delivering. So, okay, interesting. That's all my questions, and I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to put your feet to the fire there a little bit. Well, they were softball questions. I guess they weren't that bad, but thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it, and thanks for coming. I just to add to that, I wanted to mention also that we have this unique situation at AU where we have this rolling enrollment. So it's not like we have those set semesters. So it's really important for us to make sure the students in the same revision have the same experience. So it's not ideal when we have an externally hosted OER that can be changed at any time, even if it's changed for better, right? Because the student right behind you had to deal with those errors, and now you don't, right? You might get a different grade because of that. So I think that's another reason why we need a repository or some kind of AU space where we have our own copies.
Yeah, that's a unique challenge to be sure, right? And to think too that our goal, or one of our goals, I think eventually is to get to that, register today, start today model as opposed to just the continuous enrollment that we do today, and that which is fine, but but that newer model that they're looking at presents even more, challenges for us. If we are indeed going to have students register and start pretty much in one fell swoop, it's a pretty big deal. It's actually game changing for for our particular business and our industry. But curious to see how that's going to unfold. See.
Yes, yeah, many challenges, and with those challenges come opportunities. So hopefully, we can help folks adjust to those, particularly when it comes to OER.
Yeah.
I see we're at time. I've spoke so much today. I've taken everyone's time, but I appreciate you listening and coming. If you would like to check out the Remix imprint, just mosey on over to aupress.ca. Under imprints, they'll have the Remix page. You can check those out. If you want to contact the OPSP team directly, you can email them at oerpublishing@thebascau.ca. If you have OER questions, you can either contact oer@thebascau.ca or D. Cocroft, which is myself. And both of those go to me, so I can answer your questions. So thanks again for coming. And if you're watching the recording, please take a moment to share your thoughts about what an open dashboard might look like and how we can capture all that's going on and share it in ways that kind of foster a collaborative environment. So thanks for listening, and take care. I'm going to stop the recording.
Stan.